Hi, welcome. On this video, I want to once again focus in on the back and forth divisiveness that's happening within the dog training community, and with Zach George really being a kind of a lightning rod. Okay, when it comes to this issue, when it comes to those who identify as balanced, those who identify as force-free, and the attempts to, gain some sort of traction or leverage when it comes to social media. So when I say social media versus, what actually defines a process and actually connecting dots in terms of what's happening in the dog training world, understand that that's not what you're seeing happening. Okay, with those who identify as balanced dog trainers and force free, it's this attempt to go after each other. And again, Zach George, again, I talk about this, and I'm going to get into some of this as we go through some of these comments here, to help to encourage people to really pay attention to, what's not being said. Okay, as these trainers engage in cheap shots back and forth. But again, the thing that's not being said is actually, what is the real issue here? And I talk about this idea that training is a learning-based exercise by trainers who superficially motivate dogs to respond in the middle of a relationship problem. And again, the comment I put out that basically on Zach George's live, I caught him in the middle of doing a Facebook live, and very interesting after I asked some very specific questions. Okay, one of those is, what's the criteria you're using to establish that the perception of dogs are actually changing within the framework of superficial responses? He couldn't answer it. I mean, that's the point. When you start to say, oh, what happened to that live stream? That entire live stream, that disappeared. Okay, I asked like 3 or 4 questions in there, and you could see he was taken back. Number one is he knows who I am, and I'm not saying that for any other reason other than the fact that he knows my position. Okay, he knows, what I'm saying is in terms of what the issue is. So we'll talk about this as we go through, because again, some of the question is, well, what's his real agenda here? Is he just trying to generate views and likes to gain, to make money that way off social media? I believe that's part of it. But I believe part of it is when you see him going down this slippery, ideological slippery slope, and you see, I think, that was Zach George the entire time. And now as things move forward, you're seeing the mask start to slip here. So I think it's a kind of a combination of several factors here, not just one. But the same, as I go through, the same can be true about balanced dog trainers. Okay, you're going to see a comment here that I want to point out that comes from dog sense training and behavior. They're out of, I believe, Australia, and they've engaged Zach George, but as a balanced dog trainer. It's no different than, again, I talk about balanced dog trainers being, compromised, confused, why they can't push back on this or call out force-free trainers, because they're in agreement with the source of the problem. Okay, so but they're also caught up in this whole thing with social media as a vehicle, popularity for the wrong reasons. And you're seeing this. This is what you're seeing. This is why you're not seeing anything being discussed as to actually, asking the questions that need to be asked, a proper audit. Okay, what is training? What is it? Once a relationship problem is underway. So here you have this post is on the page of Robert Cabral. It's linked up with dog sense and behavior, kind of coming together to kind of try to generate some focus on Zach George to push back here. And so I'm gonna play just a portion. This is another Facebook Facebook post put up by Zach George. And Zach George is big on about talking about balanced dog trainers. And again, I talk about, Zach George, even, how he was very selective, okay, when he continued to go after the dog daddy, based again on the optics. Okay, understand, I truly believe these trainers are doing things on purpose that try to kind of elevate themselves, elevate their own agenda. Okay, it's everything's done in a very kind of selective way here. So I'll play some of this video here. This is some of his posts here before I go into some of the comments here.
To highlight, if you're going to accuse somebody of lying, general protocol in that case is to provide direct evidence. I understand that you like to provide anecdotal evidence. That means evidence that's based on your personal experience. But since we're in a scientific profession known as applied animal behavior, that is an actual science, then it's on you.
The same thing. I talk about this so-called science, okay? But understand something. I talk about why it's corrupted. It's flawed. Take this right back to Pavlov, Skinner. I wrote a book on this several years ago called The Mind and Body Connection. And I get into the details of, right from the beginning, the social aspect of the relationship was never studied the right way. And this has been on a slow boil since that time, and the problems are escalating. As the dog training world continues to come apart at the seams, because it's generated confusion, all this controversy, because it's the dog training world is based on appearances, okay, within the framework of superficial response. So it doesn't connect the dots properly by way of how a dog's decision-making process is influenced and governed. Perception of dogs not changing. Okay, and I talk about this, on my, again, I did a recent podcast there with Jack Morton. I encourage you to check it out. We'll get into some of this as well, talking through it. So here, so here you hear the science part of this. Now, here's the problem with balanced dog trainers, and this is the reality. Okay, this is they've gone in and they've accepted the core tenet of what training is. Okay, by way of how those identify as force-free, the academic community, how they've presented it as being. This goes right back to Skinner and Pavlov, to say, well, it's a learning-based exercise. We can trust responses that way. Totally one-dimensional, superficial, and so they've looked at it and they've built off of it. They've said, okay, we're gonna, there's problems here. We're gonna bring in, because you have to correct the dog. You have to bring in a negative to firm up this idea, by way of response. We have to be able to firm up responses, and so they've brought in, their own idea of it, but they've built on that which is already flawed. You understand that, because they're engaging, they're motivating dogs the way I described, rather than I talk about what's the motivator. How should you approach a relationship problem between dogs and owners? The focus should be on the relationship itself. Okay, the motivator is the relationship. Okay, then you need to align. You have to bring in those two core ingredients I talk about, influence and control, in a way that they're going to be reconciled to generate the type of change that needs to happen. That can only happen through a interaction based method. Okay, interaction based. It aligns socially, and dogs come into agreement with it. Those are the two core ingredients that affect change. Okay, it turns into a type of power play dynamic. Okay, but the one that makes sense to the dog. I talk about language of the method. I get in all the aspects of how it all comes together to create change. Totally different than balanced dog trainers and force-free. Balanced dog trainers, they've built off of this idea of things, and they're trying to firm up responses, but they're still superficially focused. They still use treats. They use motivators. They tie in that way. And what it does is it opens that door completely wide open to perception of dogs not changing at the level. So I'll talk levels here too, because the problem here is certain dynamics is that when you bring in influence at a certain level, yes, change is going to happen. Okay, I never deny that. Okay, through balanced dog training, but what people have to understand is that if it's not reconciled properly, if it's not brought in through a interaction based method, then it's not being reconciled properly. You're not going to end up with a predictable outcome. Okay, it's up in the air, so to speak, as to how much change, and then we can layer this up in terms of the relationship itself, aspects of as you're interacting with dog at all levels. But those are the things that are are just part of it. They're not things that trainers are even considering or looking at all, because Understand through balanced dog training, their focus is on just responses like force free responses in a very superficial way. Okay, so they've added to what's called the four quadrants. So they're trying to firm up this idea. This is why you hear balanced dog trainers, use language like saying balanced dog training is more science based. Well, why are they using that verbiage? Now think about that, because they've come into agreement with this. This is why when you hear trainers like Robert Cabral made that statement that science has no place in dog training, he's contradicting himself. Okay, because balanced dog trainers have built off of it. That's why they use the word more science based. So they want to see, this is the problem they're in. They're like, they're trying to work this out somehow. They want to they want to have their cake and eat it too, because that's really what balanced dog training is. It's like playing both sides of the fence. That's why they'll say, "Oh, clickers, we use clickers. Oh, food, we use food." They say they're playing it. But they're bringing in influence and control at a certain level, but it's not working out too well because they're caught in a trap. Okay, because they're not defining what training is or isn't the way I do. I say it's not a learning-based exercise, and when I say that, guess what happens? Okay, it triggers, triggers balanced dog trainers equally. They get upset at that statement because they don't agree with that for a reason. Okay, just think about what I'm saying. So I'm going to scroll down here because I want to highlight a comment here that really speaks to what's happening in the dog training world. Now here, this is from Dog Sense Training and Behavior. Okay, and their recommendation here, and think about what I'm saying here. Please don't go on to his accounts. Talk about Zach George. That's what he wants. He loves the negative attention and craves any type of engagement. Now, this is coming from a balanced dog trainer. Now, here's my point here. When I've a point where I was putting out my video content about my Flipping the Script series, it was upsetting a lot of balanced dog trainers. And guess what the statement was from the balanced dog trainers coming on to my social media to other balanced dog trainers? Don't go on to Dale's, don't watch Dale's videos and generate the views and likes or views at all, because that's going to draw more attention to him. Think about what I'm saying. This is coming from balanced dog trainers. So it's total hypocrisy here. Understand that what's going on here, in terms of social media, popularity, and I've had this discussion before. Go look at the video I did of the back and forth between K91 dog training and Zach George. Or K91 tries to call Zach George out over his positions on the dominance issue, and the whole conversation breaks down at the beginning. It's an email conversation, and K91 saying, "Hey, good job," basically saying, "Hey, I like your, your website." Just giving them props right away. And then Zach George later on in the conversation saying, "Well, because you have 200,000 followers, you're a force in the in the dog training community." See, it's all about and because I understand Zach George, that's what he actually will base his authority as a trainer on, is his popularity in social media. So understand that you have to walk this right back from the beginning. This is a corrupted ideology that is based on appearances. Both these groups of trainers, Balance and Force Free, are playing the game. Okay, it's a rigged game, and so in their mind, because they've established themselves right this way, which exploits the dog and human dynamic and sets again a counterfeit picture up for many dogs and owners, but because they're incentivized to do so because of the dynamics involved. Understand that this is like nothing more than a Ponzi scheme here. Therefore, when they talk about social media and using social media as a vehicle, both balanced and force free, that's how they're playing it. Okay, because it comes down to, like I said, that when I start to call it what the real issue is, because I don't align as a balanced trainer or force free trainer, it will upset balanced dog trainers equally, and they'll use that same statement, like don't go into, we don't want Dale to get popularity in terms of people coming. Then, well, why is that? Because it's gonna affect the balanced dog trainer's 5-year marketing plan, which has nothing to do with engaging the real problem or defining what a process really is. Understand that they're just as bad as force-free dog trainers, period. So um, so here you have a situation where you have this kind of collusion here, but based again on, but understand that both these groups are married together. Okay, it's like trying to call out a member of the family. You can't do it. It's like having a get together with the family, and you're trying to call out another member of the family that knows all your dirty laundry. And this is what's happening here. This is why you go down through all these comments. You'll see this attempt to try to ally and come up some way to shut or to shut it down. But it's just it's a popularity contest. You're not going to get anywhere because both these groups are married to the same idea of things. You can't divorce yourself from it. So I encourage people to really start to think about what's going on here. Okay, the information I put out is very, very challenging, but only because these trainers never, as individuals, never asked the questions they should have asked from the very beginning. They just took a hold of this idea of things. They didn't consider all the problems happening, and they didn't say to themselves, "Hey, listen, let the chips fall where they may." But I'm gonna if we're doing something wrong as a human, if even one dog is going to take the hit because of something we're putting out there, then everything the presses should stop. Everything should halt. That's not happening. So therefore, when you talk about the motives of all these trainers, they're all corrupted. Understand, they've already crossed these lines. So that's what you're seeing now. So Zach George, yes, he's a lightning rod, but then if you look at, it's amazing to me, these balanced dog trainers, they all come off the same way. Okay, they're all engaged in the same behavior on social media because it's all this type of kind of a monopoly, this type of protectionist, this tribal thing happening. So again, check out my website. I put lots of great information. I really talk about the real problem. These trainers are not doing that. Okay, they're all turned over to this stuff. They're all caught up in their own mess, and things are definitely escalating in the dog trainer world. Thanks for watching.